Hello everybody, it's Paul Neeson with Torah Life Ministries, and I'm reading the Torah portion for this coming Shabbat. We're up to the 48th reading in this year's cycle. It's Deuteronomy 16:18 to 21:9. So get your Bibles and we're going to start reading in Deuteronomy 16:18. If you have any comments or questions, you can always post them below the video. And sometimes people ask me what translations of the scripts I use. I use many different types of translations. I'll be reading from the Hebraic Roots Bible today, and I have many notes in here that I like to discuss also because they have really good points. But getting into this, let's start off with Deuteronomy 16:18. Now, this shouldn't be the first time you're reading the Torah portion for this week. You should be reading it each week, and then when I put my video on, you already have some information, and you could look at the parts that you weren't sure of, and we can go over those. So you want to read it more than once each week, so you get a really good understanding, and then you want to read it over and over again every year. And the more you do it, the more you're going to understand it. So that's the way you learn, folks. So let's start reading in 16:18 of Deuteronomy. It says, "You shall appoint judges and officers for yourself in all your gates, which Yahweh Elohim gives you, tribe by tribe, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment." Well, it says officers and judges, so there's two. Well, a judge judges, we know that. But the role of the officer was to carry out the judgment by the judge. Very much like the jails today and the wardens and the police, they carry out the judgment by the judge. So each tribe is to appoint judges and officers. And it says here, they shall judge the people righteousness. Now, the name of this Torah portion is actually Judges. And everybody, not only the judges and officers, but everybody should judge their fellow brother with righteousness. Righteousness according to what? According to the Torah, the guidelines and instructions. And that's what we get here in these guidelines and instructions. So you appoint officers, you appoint judges. Not only are they to carry out their judgments with righteousness, but every single believer out there today is called to be a righteous judge. You know, some people say, well, I don't judge anyone else, or I have no judge. No, we're called to be righteous judges. We're called to have a discernment, but with righteousness, to lift our brother up, not tear him down. So that's a very powerful verse right there, or that whole section of Deuteronomy 16:18. Now 19, you shall not pervert judgment. You shall not regard faces, nor shall you take a bribe. A bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. So, bribery has always throughout history been a popular thing amongst judges, amongst police, and so on. It's no different here. The reason why these instructions had to be given was how to be set apart from the daily thing that's going on in that day. If you're doing the same thing as everyone else, you're not set apart. Well, all throughout the pagan culture and history, that's what was being done. Bribery and unrighteousness and judgment. So the instructions to the children are when they go into the land, not to mingle and not to do the same thing those people are doing, but to be set apart and do it different. And here's how they're told to different. Not to take bribes and to be wise and keep your words and keep your judgments righteous. Verse 20, you shall follow perfect justice, that you may live and possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. You shall not set for yourself pillars of trees which you make for yourself near the altar of Yahweh your Elohim. Now the pillars or the trees, these were pagan symbols that were all over these pagan countries where the children went into. And they were told, you shall not duplicate what they're doing. In fact, you are to knock them down, burn them, destroy them, and they shall not be up still. And you shall not raise up for yourself any standing image which Yahweh your Elohim detests. So all over these places, there's statues and gods and all these other things that people bow down to and worship. And it says our Creator hates these things. So, some people that don't know the scripture say, oh, the Bible's all about love. Well, you can't have love without having hate. And obviously our Creator loves, so He hates. And He hates these things. People breaking the word of our Creator, breaking the commandments, honoring other gods, and bowing down to other Elohims. This is what He hates, and it says you shall not do these things. So now we're up to chapter 17. It says, you shall not sacrifice to Yahweh Elohim an ox or a sheep in which there is a blemish, any evil thing, for it is a hateful thing to do. to Yahweh your Elohim. So this is another practice that he knew would be taking place, and as the priesthood started to grow and expand, and the people started to mingle with the pagan cultures, these are the things they tried to cheat Yahweh out of their sacrifices. So instead of bringing that perfect animal, spotless, with no blemishes, people would try to deceive each other, deceive the priest, and deceive Yahweh by bringing these things. And he knew this would happen. So he said, you shall not sacrifice to Yahweh Elohim an ox or a sheep in which there is a blemish. So we got to keep that in mind, that he knew what the people were going to do, and he warned them again. Verse 2, when there is found among you in one of your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim has given you, a man or a woman who does that which is evil in the sight of Yahweh your Elohim, in transgression of his covenant, and basically that's breaking his word, that's not keeping his guidelines and instructions, transgressing his covenant. Now this is powerful, folks, because that means somebody who's not living according to the guidelines and instructions of our Creator. So that would include a lot of people that call themselves believers today. This is exactly what they're doing, and this is what's told to happen. And he has gone and served other gods and worshipped them, or the sun or the moon, or the host of heavens, which I have not commanded. So anyone who's breaking a command is a real thing. But now he's talking about worshiping the sun and the moon and the stars. The astrology today is just very popular. People are doing this all the time, believers and non-believers, or so-called believers. Well, he said this should never be done. And it says in verse 4, and it has been revealed to you, and you have heard and searching and have searched, and behold, it is true. And the thing that is confirmed, that this is a hateful thing that has been done in Israel. So this was something that he was told not to do, people were told not to do, and it was called evil. Then you shall bring out to your gates the man or that woman who has done this evil thing, the man or the woman, and you shall stone them with stones, and they shall die. Now again, we today are not to stone other people. There are judges and there are officers today, just like there were back then. But here it's talking about the person that actually found them, we're going to get into now, is the one that throws the first stone. Well, verse 6 says, at the mouth of 2 witnesses or 3 witnesses shall he that is to die be put to death. He shall not be put to death at the mouth of 1 witness. The traditional system today we have is so far against the scriptures, with throwing somebody in jail and our tax money going to support them in jail, where the scriptures for murder, rape, kidnapping, and right here worshiping the astrology and breaking the Torah in many ways is death. That is the outcome. And people today want to fight the death penalty, but this is what our Creator says. These people are to die. And this is why we have many of the problems we have today. Another issue is it says at least 2 witnesses, not 1. And many people are convicted today on the case of 1 witness. And we don't know if that witness is being true or righteous. And it leads to many problems, but our Creator is telling us at the mouth of 2 witnesses. Then it says in verse 7, like we just discussed, the hand of the witness shall be first on him to put him to death, and the hand of the people last. And you shall cut off the evil from among you. Remember, folks, this is about establishing the new community of the children that are going into the promised land. And the evil root must be cut off and destroyed before it continues to get around and continue to contaminate the community. So, for example, if you have a new congregation and it's a brand new church and it's starting up, and there's one person in the community that's spreading an evil word or creating separation or creating issues, you need to get that person out of the community before they start to contaminate it and make other people start thinking evil things as well, or bad things as well. Well, that's what was being established here. The new community of Israel that was going into the promised land, they were told that there should be no evil root, or it's going to continue to spread and get worse. Verse 8, if a matter is too hard for you in judgment, between blood and blood, between cause and cause, or between stroke and stroke, matters of strife within your gates, then you shall rise and go up to the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. And you shall come in to the priest of the Levites, and to the judge who is in those days, and shall inquire, and they shall declare the word of judgment to you. And again, that has to be based on righteousness, based on our Creator's word. Verse 10, and you shall do according to the word which they declare to you, from that place which Yahweh shall choose, and you shall be careful to do according to all that they direct you. So there wasn't any appeals in those days. No, you presented your case, and that was it. And if they said something, you were to do it. You didn't appeal it and say, well, I don't agree, or let's have a new trial. It's so different today. Verse 11, you shall do according to the mouth of the Torah which they direct you, and according to the judgment which they deliver to you. You shall not turn aside from the word which they declare to you, right or left. Now we're assuming that they're giving you a righteous judgment. Now if they're not telling you to do something righteous, then it's something else. But they were commanded and they had to do a righteous thing, and you had to follow what they had said. And a man who acts with pride, so as not to listen to the priest, who is standing to serve Yahweh your Elohim there, or the judge, even that man shall die, and you shall cut off the evil from Israel. Again, cutting off this evil root so it doesn't continue to make things worse. And the note here says, it is noteworthy to state that one was obligated to listen to the judgment of the priest, whether it was correct in their eyes or not. So it didn't matter what you thought, it mattered what their judgment was. You presented your case, but they had the final word. Verse 13, and all the people shall hear and fear, and shall not presume any more. When you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving to you, and have possessed it, and settled in it, and you shall say, let me set a king over me like all the nations around me. Well, all the nations around them had their kings, but our Creator didn't want Israel to have a physical king there. He was the king, and he said, no, this is the way it is to be. But the people, he knew that they were going to start asking for a king. He said here, when you come in and you're asking for a king, and then he goes to verse 15, then you shall certainly set a king over you. You may not give an alien to rule over you, one who is not your brother. So he didn't ideally want them to have a king, but he knew that they would want it. So he's giving them the instructions now of what shouldn't be a king or who can't be a king. And it had to be a brother among them that could, not an alien amongst them. Only he shall not multiply horses to himself, nor cause the people to turn back to Egypt, so as to multiply horses, since Yahweh has said to you, you shall not again return this way anymore. So this is a subject where people get confused or take this out of context. Many kings all throughout history had many different horses. The whole basis of this scripture here is not to turn your heart away from our Creator, worshiping anything more than Him. Nothing is more important than Him. If you have too many horses or too many anything today, if you have too many cars, you're worshiping those things more than you are Him. It wasn't a command that they should only have one horse. The command that you should not multiply is that you should not have these things higher than our Creator. But it goes on to say in the next verse, he shall not multiply wives to himself, and his heart shall not turn aside, and he shall not greatly multiply unto himself silver or gold. Of course, silver and gold needed to be multiplied amongst the kingdom to make things to prosper, but it wasn't for them to worship and multiply it so much where they were going to worship it. It wasn't limiting them to having just one gold coin or even one wife. Now, our Creator didn't enjoy the polygamy, but he certainly did not allow it. And when he says you shall not multiply wives, he gives an ending to that. So your heart shall be led astray, like King Solomon marrying many pagan wives. No, if they were within the tribe, in the community, like King David, he had many concubines and he had his wives. That was okay according to our Creator. It wasn't ideal, but it was okay according to our Creator. Well, that's a very controversial subject, and it's not for this time. We'll get into it another time if you want, and you can post your questions and comments, but not your feelings, because it's our feelings in this country where it's crazy to even think that. But it's very common around the world for people to have more than one wife. And the scriptures do not talk against having more than one wife if it's not turning your heart away. It talks about not having pagan wives, but not more than one wife. And I'm not condoning it. I have one wife, and I'm happy with one wife, but I'm telling you, the scriptures do not talk against it. And it's not talking against it here for the kings either, from what I could see. So it says here, and it shall be when he sits on the throne of his kingdom, he shall write for himself a copy of this Torah in a book from before the priest, the Levites. So here is an instruction for the kings to write out the Torah. That is powerful, to write out the first 5 books of the scriptures. And verse 19, and it shall be with him, and he shall read it all the days of his life, that he may learn to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to keep all the words of this Torah and these statements, to do them. Well, we look at today the equivalent of a king back then, and he never really wanted a king, but we look at the president as the highest in this country. I assure you, folks, I assure you, I don't know everything the president does in privacy, but I assure you he's not reading the Torah every day, if at all. And this is another reason why we have so many problems. And he definitely hasn't written it out. Verse 20, so that his heart may not be lifted up above his brothers, and that he may not turn aside from the commandment to the right or to the left, so that he may prolong his days over his kingdom, and he and his sons in the midst of Israel. Well, again, this was for the king of Israel and the kings of Israel, and those that upheld the Torah versus those that didn't of the kings. We could see all throughout the books and chronicles of what happened and the consequences for the many kings that didn't do this and actually broke the Torah, and the kings that actually did follow it, and the blessings amongst them. So we could see that. In no way I'm comparing our president today to one of the kings of Israel. I'm not doing that. As a matter of fact, all of these instructions are for the children when they're in Israel, when they're coming out of Egypt, going into the promised land, crossing over the Jordan. They're not really for us today in this country, in this land, with the kings and what they'll be doing, but they're examples of the principles that Yahweh had for the people in the ideal place of how they should act. And we should take those examples and principles and use them today wherever we are. So we need to keep that in mind. Verse 18, the priest, the Levites, all the tribe of Levi shall have no portion of inheritance with Israel. They shall eat fire offerings of Yahweh, even his inheritance. And he shall have no inheritance among his brothers. Yahweh himself is the inheritance, and he has spoken to him. And this shall be the priest's due from the people, from those that offer a sacrifice, whether an ox or a sheep, that they shall give to the priest the leg and the 2 cheeks and the stomach, the first of your grain and of your new wine, and of your oil, and the first of your fleece of your flock, you shall give to him. For Yahweh your Elohim has chosen him out of your tribes to stand to serve in the name of Yahweh, he and his sons continually. And if a Levite comes from one of your gates of Israel, where he has been living, and comes with all the desire of his soul to a place where Yahweh shall choose, then he shall serve in the name of Yahweh his Elohim, and all his brothers, the Levites who stand before Yahweh, do. Then he shall serve in the name of Yahweh his Elohim, as all his brothers, the Levites who stand before Yahweh, do. Then he shall eat the portion like the portion, except of the sales of what belonged to his father. When you come into the land which Yahweh your Elohim has given you, you shall not learn to do according to the hateful acts of those nations. Okay, let's take a break here and look at 18:9. And this is something, again, it's for the children when they went into Israel, but it's wonderful principles for us to follow today. When you're moving somewhere into a neighborhood, into a state, into a country, wherever you are, it says, when you come into the land which Yahweh Elohim has given to you, and all the land is his, so he gives us if we get a new house or something, you shall not learn to do according to the hateful acts of those nations. And the hateful acts, we might think right away, well, Sodom and Gomorrah, and when Lot went in there, and the hateful things they were doing. Well, you know what? Homosexual marriage today? This is a hateful act according to our Creator. How do we know what's a hateful act? He says it in his word. It's not keeping Torah. So a good translation of this would be, when you come into your new place, wherever you're going to live, you shall not follow the breaking of the Torah that your neighbors are doing, but you shall keep the Torah. And in verse 10, it says, there shall not be found in you one who passes his son or his daughter through the fire, one that uses divination, an observer of clouds, or one fortune teller, or spellcaster. So basically, this is what the people were doing. These were the specific hateful acts that he was talking about in this scripture. Many of the children back then were sacrificed to Molech and these other pagan gods. Sacrificed, burned, fire on an altar. And it says, you shall not do these hateful things. But it wasn't just that. It was looking at the stars in the sky. And this is the second time we look at this thing about astrology. Or even going to a fortune teller. You know, even driving here, I pass a little place, big sign fortune teller and neon lights. You know, the only people that use neon lights these days are strip clubs and fortune tellers. Something to think about. Things that make you go, But that's what it is. It says not even to have that. Or a magic charmer, or one consulting spirits, or a wizard. Communicating with the dead, or one communicating with the dead. For all these things are an abomination to Yahweh, and because of these filthy acts, Yahweh Elohim is expelling these nations before you. So these things are things that the nations were expelled for doing these hateful acts. And it wasn't just limited to these. There were many more, but he's specifically talking about these right now. You shall be perfect with Yahweh your Elohim. Now there are some people today that say we can't keep the Torah, we can't keep all the commands. That's not a good enough excuse. And when you look at the commands and the guidelines, you're right, we can't keep them all. There's many that we're not obligated to keep, but the ones we can keep, we should keep, or at least make an effort to do so. I've said it many times, he sees a heart, not the outcome. And he knows if we desire to keep these things or not. But when you shall be perfect with Yahweh Elohim. So everything we possibly can keep, and that includes the principles. We can't use the excuse, well, we're not there, so we don't got to do it that way. No, the principles and the idea. We still got to keep the commands we could. And people say, well, I can't keep all the 10 commandments. Look, of the 613 commandments, what percentage of them is 10? And that's a very, very low percentage. So if you can't keep, 1% of the commandments, you're in trouble. And we got to think about these things, folks. For these nations whom you shall expel, listen to observers of clouds and knows the dividing. But as to you, Yahweh your Elohim has not given to you to do so. Yahweh your Elohim shall raise you up a prophet from among you, of your brothers, like me, and you shall listen to him. According to all that you desired of Yahweh your Elohim in Horeb, in the day of the assembly, saying, let me not hear again the voice of Yahweh my Elohim, nor let me see this great fire anymore, at least I die. Remember they told that, and then Moses was the one that was the prophet. Well, here again, Moses is telling them, well, you don't want to listen to me, so he's going to raise up a prophet among you. In verse 17, and Yahweh said to me, they have spoken well what they have said. I shall raise up a prophet to them from among their brothers, one like you, and I will put my words in his mouth, and I shall speak to them all that I shall command him. So this is saying there's going to be other prophets like Moses who's going to be able to do the job of a prophet, and everything that's spoken to him, he's going to tell the people. Remember, the role of the prophet, and Moses was more than just a prophet, but the role of the prophet is to hear from our Creator and take that message to the people. Verse 19, and it shall be, whoever will not listen to my words, which he shall speak in my name, I will require it at his hand. And it shall be, whoever will not listen to my words, which he shall speak in my name, and that's the prophet that he said amongst them, I will require it at his hand. But the prophet who presumes to speak a word in my name, that which I have not commanded him to speak, and who speaks the name of the other gods, even that prophet shall die. Now it says in the scriptures there are many people that are going to come as prophets, or professing that they are the prophet, or the words and all these other things. It says if anyone comes to make a prediction, and I did not predict it, I did not give it, it wasn't a prophecy from me, and they're teaching people or telling people these lies, it's going to create a big problem. Well, how do you know if it's true or not? So if somebody says something, well, if it doesn't come true, so if I say, Yahweh told me that this building's going to fall down in an hour, so I got to finish in an hour and get out of here. Well, if I get out of here in an hour and the building doesn't fall down, I'm a false prophet. I didn't say it's my opinion, I think, or I feel this is going to happen. I said he told me. So he didn't tell me. Some other spirit told me or something. Well, I am a false prophet. And it says here, that prophet shall die. And I am not going to tell you or say anything that our Creator's word doesn't say. But I don't want to have a premature death. So we look at verse 21. And if you say in your heart, how shall we know the word which Yahweh has not spoken? When a prophet speaks in the name of Yahweh, if the thing does not happen or come about, that is the thing which Yahweh has not spoken. That prophet has spoken it proudly. You shall not be afraid of him. So it's basically saying you need to fear true prophets But don't be afraid of these false prophets. And when it says fear them, you're not fearing them out of worry. You're fearing them because they have the word of Yahweh, and it's his word that you're truly fearing. But it's saying if a false prophet comes along, it's not my word, and don't fear that person. Now we're going to get up to chapter 19, and we're going to read this here. It says, when Yahweh your Elohim shall cut off the nations whose land Yahweh your Elohim is giving to you, and when you dispose of them and live in their cities and in their houses, you shall separate 3 cities for you in the midst of your land, which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess it. You shall prepare the way for yourself, and shall divide into 3 parts the borders of your land, which Yahweh your Elohim shall cause you to inherit, so that every manslayer may flee there. So these are the 3 cities of refuge, and we're going to hear more about this now. And this is the case of the manslayer who shall flee there, that he may live. Whoever strikes his neighbor without knowing, and has not hated him yesterday and the day before, even he who goes into the forest with his neighbor to cut wood, and his hand brings a stroke with the axe to cut down the tree, and the iron had slipped from the wood, and finds his neighbor so that he dies, he shall flee to one of these cities and shall live. So it was for the unintentional murders. That's what for this city was for. It says in verse 6 that the avenger of blood not pursue the manslayer when his heart is hot, and shall overtake him because the way is long, and he shall strike him so to die, and he has no sentence of death, for he did not hate him yesterday or the day before. So when there's death taking place, whether it's accident or on purpose, many times in human nature for somebody close to that person that was murdered or killed, whether by accident or murder wouldn't be an accident, but regardless, there's going to be somebody that wants to take revenge often, not always, but often. And it's saying if this person could flee to the city of refuge, he does not have to worry about that person coming to him. But if he stays there, then he's in danger. On the account of this, I am commanding you, saying, you shall separate yourself 3 cities. And if Yahweh your Elohim shall enlarge your border, as he has sworn to your fathers, and shall give to all you all the land which he has spoken to give to your fathers, if you will keep these commandments which I am commanding you today, to love Yahweh your Elohim, and to walk in his ways forever, then you shall add to yourself other 3 cities to these 3. Then you shall add to yourself another 3 cities to these 3. And innocent blood shall not be shed in the midst of your land, which Yahweh your Elohim is given to you as an inheritance, and there be blood on you. And if a man hates his neighbor, and he lies in wait for him, and raises up against him, and strikes him for his life, so that he dies, and flees to one of these cities, then the elders of the city shall send and bring from him there, and give him to the hand of the avenger of the blood, that he may die. So again, if it was on purpose, then the judges can get that person back, and the avenger can do what he has to do. Your eyes shall not pity him, but you shall put away the innocent blood from Israel, and it shall be well with you. Again, there wasn't throwing a murderer in jail. That wasn't one of the cases, or the way they handled it. No, the person that committed murder was to be put to death. You may not remove your neighbor's landmark, which those formerly have set in your inheritance, and which you shall not inherit the land which Yahweh your Elohim is giving you to possess it. So now we get into completely changes the subject from talking about the slayer and the death and the cities of refuge to talking about your land. And again, this was something that was going on in those days, so you're always telling them how to be set apart. You may not remove your neighbor's landmark, which those formerly have set in your inheritance, which you shall inherit in the land your Elohim is giving you to possess. So you cannot deceive your neighbors and start moving landmarks around. No, they were set, and that's the way they were. One witness shall not raise against a man for any iniquity, for any sin, in any sin which he sins. At the mouth of 2 witnesses, or the mouth of 3 witnesses, the thing shall be established. We already discussed that. Today we have 1 witness. A person can be convicted, but no, in this it was 2 witnesses. If a victorious witness raises up, if a vicious witness raises up against any man to charge apostasy against him, Then both men who have had the dispute shall stand before Yahweh, before the priest and the judges, who shall be in those days. And the judges shall carefully investigate, and behold, if the witness is a false witness, and he has testified falsely against his brother, then you shall do to him as plotted to do to his brother, and you shall put away the evil from amongst you. Again, it's about cutting off the evil from the community. So one of the restorations was if a false witness gave a false testimony, what the outcome would have been towards that witness he was witnessing against, or towards that person he was witnessing against, would actually happen to him in reverse. So this kept people in their place. So, and as it says here, that evil would be away from you, and there would be no evil in the land. And those who remain shall hear and fear, and therefore shall not add to commit any such evil among you. So if a false witness is found guilty and it's on him, I tell you this, there's not going to be other false witnesses when they see this carried out. And your eye shall not pity, life shall go for life, eye shall go for eye, and tooth shall go for tooth, hand for hand, and foot for foot. Now, chapter 20. When you go out to do battle against your enemies, and see the horses and chariots of a people more than you, you shall not be afraid of them. For Yahweh your Elohim is with you, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. Now this is a command, folks. You shall not be afraid of anyone that appears to be stronger than you, because you have Yahweh. Well, you know what? The devil can deceive us and appears that he has certain powers, but we have Yahweh, so we can't fear him and be afraid of him. The enemy cannot harm us physically unless Yahweh allows it. If we stick to Yahweh's word, he has no reason to allow us to succumb to the enemy. The enemy can only deceive us when we fear Yahweh, when we distrust Yahweh, when we have no faith in Yahweh. So we need to fear Yahweh and not the enemy or anyone else, regardless of how big their army looks or anything like that. It says, and you shall be, when you draw near to battle, the priest shall come and speak to the people and say to them, Hear Israel, you are drawing near today to battle against your enemies. Do not let your heart be faint. Do not fear, nor tremble, nor be terrified before their faces. For Yahweh your Elohim is he who is going before you to fight for against you the enemies, to save you. So the priests are giving this motivational speech about not fearing anything because Yahweh is behind us. And the officers shall speak to the people, saying, and now he talks about balancing out, and this is making sure that not only is there not an evil root amongst Israel, but there's no weak root left in the army. So no weak root going into battle. Who is the man who has built a new house and is not dedicated to it? Let him go and return to his house, and he not die in battle, and another man dedicate it. So if somebody gets a new house, their mind's going to be on their new house, not on going into battle. They're a weak root, so they're not to be wanting to go into battle. And who is the man that has planted a vineyard and has not used its fruit? Let him go and return to his house, then he not die in battle, and another man use his fruit. So again, a man's mind is going to be on his new garden, his new fruit that's coming in, not in the battle. Everyone in battle had to be completely focused and faithful. And who is the man that has betrothed a woman and has taken her? Let him go and return to his house, that he not die in the battle, and another man take her. So if somebody's engaged or about to get married, that's what he's going to be thinking about. He's not going to be thinking about war. So every person that was in the war was a strong root, and they would be able to accomplish the goal of defeating these bigger armies. And the officers shall speak further to the people and say, Who is the man who is afraid and faint of heart? Let him go and return to his house. Then the heart of his brothers will not melt like his heart. So a weak root can destroy the strong root, but if both are strong, there's not going to be an issue. So all the people that are afraid and not faithful, leave now. And it shall be, when the officers have finished speaking to the people, the commanders of the army shall be appointed to the head of the people. When you come near a city to fight against it, then call to it peace. So before any war was to be taken place or any battle was being taken place, the leaders would ask for a peace treaty with the people that are there. And it shall be, if it answers peace to you, and shall open to you, then it shall be that all the people found in it shall be forced laborers for you, and shall serve you. And remember, this wasn't serving them as slaves like we could think of today. No, serve you in a righteous manner. You were to be over them, but in a righteous manner. So you weren't going to deceive and take advantage of these people that created peace with you. So when we hear that, it sounds like, well, now they got to serve you in hard labor. No, it was a righteous exchange that was being taken place if they would have been peaceful. And if it shall not make peace with you and shall make war with you, then you shall lay siege against it. And Yahweh your Elohim shall give it into your hand, and you shall strike every male by the mouth of the sword. Only the woman and the little ones and the livestock and the city and its plunder you shall seize for yourself, and you shall eat the plunder of your enemies, which Yahweh your Elohim has given you. So you shall do to all the cities very far away from you, which are not the cities of these nations, but the cities close to you. So the cities far away, you can overtake those cities and take back the children and the women if they're willing to come. But it says here, but the cities of the people which Yahweh Elohim has given to you, the cities close to you, you shall not keep alive any that breathes. So everything must be destroyed. But you shall utterly destroy them, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, as Yahweh Elohim has commanded you, so that they may not teach you to do according to all the filthy deeds which they have done to their Elohim, and you would sin against Yahweh your Elohim. So you destroy them. So you go in there and you destroy all those unclean things so they do not corrupt you. When you shall lay siege into a city many days to fight against it, to capture it, you shall not destroy its trees in order to force an axe against them. For you shall eat of them, and you shall not cut them down. For is the tree of the field a man, that it shall not be used by you to lay siege? So you're not fighting against the trees or the forest, you're fighting against man. So there's no reason to go in and cut down the trees, especially the fruit trees. It says you can cut down other trees, but there's not really much use for them, maybe for shade or beauty. But the fruit tree you shall not cut down. It produces food, and it's a gift from a wonderful Creator. I'm a tree lover. I eat my fruit from the trees. I love fruit trees. And it's a shame if somebody I just saw cut down a big, beautiful mango tree, and it was an old tree. But here, again, these were the battles that were taking place throughout the Promised Land and the instructions, but the principle is the same today. So we keep these in mind. Okay, so now we're up to chapter 21. If one is found slain in the land which Yahweh Elohim is given to you to possess it, lying in the field, and it is not known who has struck him, then your elders and your judges shall come out, and they shall measure the cities which are around the one slain. And it shall be that the city nearest to the one slain, even the elders of that city, shall take a heifer of the herd which has not been worked with, and which has not drawn in the yoke. And the elders of that city shall bring the heifer down to an ever-flowing stream, which is not plowed nor sown, and there they shall break the heifer's neck, there by the stream. Now, I got to be honest with you folks, when I read this, I was like, what in the world are they talking about? And certainly the people at Peter and all the other animal rights activists will not like this. So every time somebody is found dead, but they don't know why they died, pretty much as a result of homicide or something like this, they are to take this heifer down to a stream and break its neck. Well, there's a note here that says, the shedding of innocent blood for sin showed the importance that was put on compassion for life, even if it was not known who killed the man. So that's the note in the scriptures here, and it gets into this. And we'll talk more about this in verse 9, but let's go to verse 4. And the priest of the sons of Levi shall come near, for Yahweh Elohim has chosen them to minister to him and bless in the name of Yahweh. And by their mouth in every controversy and every stroke be tried. And all the elders of that city nearest to the one slain shall wash their hands by the stream over the heifer's neck who was broke. And they shall answer and say, our hands have not shed this blood, nor have our eyes seen it. So apparently, there was to be no bloodshed in the land amongst the brothers and sisters, amongst each other. And if it was here, the innocent blood, whether it was innocent blood or not, there was no blood to be shed unless there was a battle or something like this, or an accident, and that's why we discussed the cities of refugees. Verse 8, O Yahweh, be merciful to your people Israel, whom you have redeemed, and do not allow innocent blood in the midst of your people Israel, and the blood shall be forgiven them. So you see the value they had on one's life here, and the connection. They realized that who was the ultimate creator of life, and who was the one to give and take the life. And they didn't want any innocent blood on their hands. Now we get up to verse 9. It says, "And you shall put away the innocent blood from among you, for you shall do that which is right in the eyes of Yahweh." So that's the end of this Torah portion this week. And next week's Torah portion is going to be number 49, portion 49, and it's going to be Deuteronomy 21:10 to 25:19. And before we finish that, let's go back to verse 9 here. As we said, we read on a note earlier, it said, "The shedding of innocent blood for sin showed the importance that was put on compassion for life, even if it was not known who killed the man." So we started off with the perfect sacrifice of a perfect animal, the spotless cow, the spotless ox or lamb. Nothing could be wrong with that. And we go and we look at, and it ends in blood here. And that no innocent blood should be shed on the land for the people and involved. It's hard for us to comprehend this, folks, but the blood belongs to Yahweh, not to us. This is why we're not to eat an animal with the blood. And the sacrifices, they were to be the blood of a perfect animal, which we saw at the beginning of this Torah portion. And now here, this innocent blood, they didn't know what the reason was, but they valued life so much. But this was what was to be done and how it was to be done, and this was what was told. So, folks, if you have comments or questions, post them below the videos. We're getting towards the end of the Torah reading for this year's cycle. We got about 5 or 6 more readings left. Read next week's after you read this week's Parasha 49, which is again Deuteronomy 21:10 to 25:19. Post your comments and questions below the video. Until then, everybody, have a great day, and shalom, shalom.
Come out of the world, oh my people, seek the truth, avoid the evil, learn Yahweh's ways, Torah Life Ministries, come out of the world.